Greetings and welcome to the Badger Cave's West Wing, where our stealthy polecats ferret out the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Slam Bam Badger style. Your sinuous hosts for this evening are myself, Supreme Doge in charge, Dr. Random McCann, Panda at Large, Max, Simpson's kin, not jaundiced, and our Anchorilla Scott. Unfortunately, Hannah Wallen could not be here today as she has to attend to an emergency. She had to go to take her husband to the hospital. Our thoughts are with you, Hannah, but I'm sure everything will be fine. This evening, we'll be covering the following topics. UK MP Philip Davies uses an opportunity to pose the unthinkable question, what about the men? A Scottish playwright decides it's time to have a show about locker room talk, because we've always wanted that. A deeply troubled and isolated lone wolf accidentally shoots a Russian ambassador and in his shame tells everyone that God is great. Germany. Germany.
Sorry,
No, it's okay. Germany has passed a new law that will really take care of those nasty, nasty fake news peddlers. And finally, our bonus story for the patron-only after show. Feminist Current makes a bold suggestion in order to keep women safe from those rapey men. Instill a curfew for men, because bad men will definitely go home before dark if we tell them to. Anyway, if you want to listen to this topic or enjoy further personalized discussion with the Badgers on select topics, consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And now I will hand it off to Mr. Max Darrett for the first item. The news.
And if you want to enjoy personalized discussion with me, I'm willing to do it for free. But anyways, Let's go on to the news. Every day that passes, we get closer to Kojima's dystopia. I think we can all agree, right, Brian?
Yes.
Yes. In an interview published 2 days ago, the one that you see on, I'm going to translate it for you, Germany's Justice Minister, Heiko Maas, it's an awesome name, said that judges and state prosecutors need to crack down as quick as possible on fake news and hate speech, particularly on social media platforms like Facebook. Moss has repeatedly warned Facebook to respect the laws against defamation in Germany, which are much more rigid than those in the United States. He notes particularly that, quote, defamation and malicious gossip are not covered under freedom of speech. If one were to violate these principles, one could see up to 5 years in jail. This concern with fake news has garnered more attention with the upcoming German parliamentary election expected in September. It will be interesting to see how many cases will be prosecuted in an election year, because in 2015, a shocking 218,000 cases involving insults were filed with prosecutors. Who knows how much higher it could be in 2017? On top of this, fears of fake news have increased after the head of Germany's domestic intelligence agency reported a rise in Russian propaganda and disinformation campaigns aimed at destabilizing German society. Finally, last Friday, the parliamentary floor leader for Angela Merkel's Conservatives said that government wanted to introduce a law in early 2017 that would require social media firms to set up local offices to respond faster to complaints. Brian, save me from this crap.
Well, this is terrifying if you live in Germany. So they're talking about... I got this one from Kraut and Tea, which is why the article is in German. Kraut sent it to me, and I tried to find an English version of this story, and the only one I could find was on the Daily Stormer. So you'll forgive me if I didn't put that one up on the screen. So, but...
If anybody's feeling a little bit anxious about that, don't worry. I translated from a story from Reuters, so don't worry. It's everything I said is true.
We didn't go that route. I mean, we're terrible, but we're not that terrible. So, but yeah, I mean, basically what you're looking at is something really fucked up. Like, it was bad enough when, you know, you learned that Mark Zuckerberg and some other social media sites were going to try to come together to make sure that fake news is filtered out and otherwise removed from, you know, people's timelines because they don't want to spread misinformation, whatever that means. But Germany is actually talking about legal recourse for fake news. And the question is, how are they going to know what's fake and what isn't? Who's going to determine that? And that's the part
Okay,
I think that should be scary.
If it's your opinion that the latest thing was caused by Muslims, then that's fake news. It was just a truck. It was just a little truck that could. This is real news. This is pre-truth.
Yeah.
The truck became self-aware.
Yeah, there you go. The truck of peace. If I may be so bold as to try and shed some light on this subject a little bit. It's funny that Facebook is saying they're going to try and stop this fake news, and all this sort of thing, because Facebook and every other site on the internet that up until about a year and a half ago was posting fake news articles on a regular basis because they were getting paid for it because it was native advertising, is to blame for this. Mm-hmm. They fucking propagated the situation. They made millions and millions of dollars off of this shit. They've been doing it for years until fucking Gamergate got the fucking FTC to change the laws. So to hear them talking about, we're really upset about this. Oh gosh, we got to put a stop to this. Blah, 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 blah. Motherfuckers, y'all created it. You created a fucking ecosystem of fucking profit around fake news articles in your fucking websites.
Yep.
This is fucking insane. I mean, we really are in a fucking bizarro timeline.
Oh, and
people can get away with now coming back and saying, "Oh, we've got to stop this abomination that we created." Get the fuck out of here with that, man.
But the thing is, though, I don't know that the fake news that they're allowing to slip through is the fake news that they're actually going to be removing. I think that what that means is, like, for example, there was a video that you and it's not news, but it's just an example of what I'm talking about. There's a video that you shared that MTV, it was making the rounds today, that MTV put out, that was, and then Max made a response video to it too. Yeah. It was about the New Year's revolutions for white guys, and this is not something that Mark Zuckerberg would take down. I mean, but if you made something that was the reverse, and it'd be the same video in every way with even similar commentary, that would get pulled for hate speech and whatnot. I mean, there were even people who made formal complaints to Facebook about that video that was talking about, like, and another post that was about white genocide or something like that. And they took a screenshot of the response from Facebook, which was basically like, well, this... thank you for sending your complaints, because we try to make sure that Facebook is a safe place and all that for people who want to, exchange ideas on social media. We looked into your case and we don't see any problem with it, so we're not going to remove it. So they're really, this is not coming from an equitable place. In terms of how the social media is doing it, ABC News is going to be they're going to be the group that's going to look to see what's the fake news and what's not. So, there's that, which means that, well, you know what that means. Right. And then as far as Germany goes, and Merkel's concerned, according to Kraut, he said that Germans that essentially spread fake news, or people who originate them, like whatever Germany's alternative media might be or what have you, they can face penalties of up to 5 years in prison for fake news.
Well, I mean, I wonder if Germany actually has something similar to what we have, like a truth in advertising type thing that applies to this sort of thing. If that's what they're going for, just a, I mean, it's... I'm kind of, it's like, I kind of wonder where they're coming from.
Well, yeah, I wonder about that too. There is I guess it's two ways to look at it, or maybe there are two, at least, subgroups within what we consider to be media and journalism that is usually spread throughout social media. There's the stuff that's trying to sell you something, and the stuff that's trying to peddle an ideology, alter your views, cause you to vote a certain way or whatever. There's the stuff that has a political agenda, and there's the stuff that has a profit-driven agenda. Now, you were talking about the false advertising thing. I mean, obviously, if it's a profit-motivated piece of media, that's going to be relatively straightforward in terms of whether or not it's fake, because you can check the facts on that and find out if what they're saying is true, and if it isn't, then it's fake, right? And then, but then there are like some things that might be harder to determine, not just because they may not be true, but rather because it's impossible to determine how legit it is. For example, let's say there were the videos about the solar freaking roadways. When you're making videos for solar freaking roadways, and you're basically telling people what they're going to get if they donate to the Kickstarter, yeah, I mean, there's a lot there that can be debunked, but I don't think that the persons making the video shouldn't be able to make the video anyway, as long as other people should be able to come out and say, this is bullshit and here's why. So, I mean, I don't really think that that's a problem, and I don't know that it's malicious. It could just be greed motivated. But when it comes to the ideological stuff, like if you have Al Jazeera and they're like taking, quotes out of their political opponents out of context, and they're trying to, I don't know, like they're trying to misrepresent or alter the facts in order to drive home a narrative, whether it's about, America or the Middle East or some other government or whatever, or they're trying to talk about feminism and they're clearly bullshitting. That's not going to get called out as fake news, although it probably should. And at the same time, if you want to go to the other end of the spectrum, if you have like some kind of conspiracy website talking about how, the chemtrails are making the frogs gay, that is also probably something you can consider fake news. But then even for those, I would wonder whether or not it's a good idea to censor them. Because
right, see, that's what I was kind of getting at, is because like you're saying, you brought up Al Jazeera, and that would be a good example of they would probably get a pass on something that somebody else wouldn't.
Yeah, and they would,
even if it was the same information, because they are an established media outlet like RT or Al Jazeera, whatever it is. It's like, how do you enforce this?
Well, that's just it. The other side of it is that they may be established, like people know Al Jazeera Plus, or they know RT, as you were pointing out, or Vox or whatever. Right. But that doesn't necessarily make them credible, because if we want to, that's the thing that I wonder about, because are they just going to say, well, Tommy Loren has her on the Blaze or whatever, she has her rant that she does, I forget what it's called, Final Thought or something, and that one spread. That's how she became big enough to get invited onto the Daily Show with Trevor Noah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't like that. I don't think that makes her valid or invalid. Like the fact that she might be popular or established. Exactly.
Just because she has a platform doesn't make her words and her ideas, legitimate or substantive.
And that's the part that mainly concerns me with all this fake news stuff is, well, first of all, it's funny because of the timing. So, at first there was a dismissal of all things that were considered to be alternative media by mainstream media. Right. And even, though some media sites that do have a lot of followers, like the Young Turks, for example, considered themselves to be alternative media. There was a dismissal of the power of alternative media until the election. Maybe even until Brexit, people were starting to talk about it. But definitely after the election was over, everybody was like, holy shit, this alternative media shit is actually reaching people. Or at least that was the assumption that was made. Whether or not that's true is hard to determine. And so all of a sudden, you have like people in political power here in the States and people in media that are mainstream media, like your CBS, NBC, CNN, etc., basically saying the reason why things turned out the way they should have, because, God damn it, if they weren't supposed to, it's because of fake news. So now we're going to go after fake news. And so this is my main issue with the whole fake news thing, is it feels really artificially, ideologically motivated. I don't even say it feels. It looks that way. It looks bad for people who want to try to shed light on something that the mainstream media won't. And the fact that they've tried doing this even before they called out fake news, like if you remember CNN, when they were talking about the WikiLeaks DNC leaked emails, they said it's illegal for you to look at these things or go to sources other than ours in order to get the facts. Don't worry. Don't do it yourself. Don't go to alternative media sites. Don't try to get somebody who doesn't know what they're doing to do it, because we know what we're doing and we'll tell you what they say. And so if you look at it in the context of how it's been going, the fact that Angela Merkel was basically like, oh yeah, give him like five years in prison for spreading lies, for spreading fake news. That's the part that concerns me, because it's not about whether or not fake news exists. Obviously, there are people. I mean, again, I got this. I found the English version of this article on the Daily Stormer, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So, obviously there's stuff out there that's probably less reputable than other things. I'm not saying the Daily Stormer never tells the truth. I don't know. I've never been there, except for the one time for this article. But I guess what I'm getting at is that we, on some level, the individual needs to be able to find the truth themselves. And yes, a lot of people are not going to get it. But I think that the majority of people are not as dumb as we think, especially if they're looking. Because most people are probably still going to get their news from mainstream media outlets. I mean, most of them are. So you're just, what this is directed at mostly is the few that are either going to run into stuff like Tommy Loren on their timelines, or, you know, RT or something, or the people who are actively looking for, like, they know what the mainstream narrative is and they're looking for the alternatives to find out where the truth is at. But I think that that's the rarest number of people.
And part of the I guess if you look at this in a bigger context too, the question comes up about enforcement. Because, you know, how do you enforce this? How do you regulate it? How do you devote that kind of manpower and time to doing it in a fashion that is actually where they can, you know, take actionable, like, where it's actionable against, like, fake news? It's like, because this stuff happens 24 hours a day, 365, you know, it's just always happening. And, you know, as we've seen time and time again on the internet, once something gets out there, it's out there. It's forever. Not going away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there forever. So that creates a very interesting problem about regulation. It's like, what are they going to have to, are they going to set up a, you know, an official agency where you have to submit through them, and then they vet the information, and then you can put it, like, go
to my fact checkers. Max, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. No, I already know what the correct answer to Scott's question is about how you would regulate this. You do it with an AI, right, Brian?
Oh God, that's worked out so great in the past.
Algorithms and shit, right?
Yeah, YouTube, wonderful. YouTube heroes. Brilliant.
I know what you know. You're making a Metal Gear reference, right?
Yes. No, it just all comes back to Metal
what we
Gear
need is the
Solid
Patriots. 2. Yeah.
Yes, we need the. Well, no, we shouldn't need the Patriots. We should be able to rely on the people's power to think for themselves individually. Yeah. But, you know, in a society, a digital society where organizations like BuzzFeed can pop up and get hundreds of thousands of hits a day, it's really hard to have that kind of faith. And where do you go from here? You can't really put your faith in the hands of governmental organizations or even the social media organizations to be able to filter out this sort of stuff, because everybody's predisposed to bias. So I wonder if something like this is just a sign that things are starting to move towards that digital oblivion. I guess I can't think of another term for it.
I would like to add also that I thought about this threat, and I thought about what you were saying, Scott. How would you even be able to enforce it on, if it especially if it's occurring on such a scale? And my thinking is that I wouldn't say empty, but it's a threat. It's a law that was made, or a policy that's being passed in order to motivate people away. To discourage people from doing it. It's a deterrent, exactly.
It's a nuclear deterrent.
And in extreme cases, like, say, because I mean this would naturally only apply to Germany. So let's say Germany has the equivalent of some alt-right, Milo Yiannopoulos type character, and he is becoming really popular. If he got big enough, then maybe they would go after him to make an example, and then they would they would literally make an example out of him, and they would take German Milo and throw him in prison, and it would continue to deter other people who were thinking about going that route because maybe the cost is too high. I don't know. Yeah. That's a possibility. I would imagine that it's a difficult thing to actually pull off.
Right, and I think you hit it on the head, and that's what they're going to do. Because I can't imagine that they are willing to devote the kind of resources necessary to implement this sort of law. Other than, like you said, there's like, all right, we find the big guy, when they start fucking up, we nail them one time, and everybody else's butts are going to start puckering up a little bit. Because there's no way to enforce this. I mean, you can't. And it's kind of funny too. It's like, oh, it's Germany, and they're trying to do some fucking crazy thing. It's like, oh, fucking Merkel,
It all comes down to what the big danger is. What do they consider fake news? And I'm going to make the statement that it's basically anything that goes against whatever their political ideology is, and that could be any of those things could be a target. And I think it's really fucked up. Germany is not as it's not as free a country as I thought. When you can just do shit like that.
And here's the other thing, just one more point really quick. It's like, this is kind of, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic when I'm saying this, but this reminds me of the Patriot Act in in its broad scope, in its very broad strokes, the way it's painted or put together, it can encompass a lot of things there that might
be
not necessarily fall
easily.
Exactly. So that's what bothers me about this more than anything is the potential for this just to be another way to fuck people over, and as if there aren't enough of those already. So,
all right. Okay, well, unless you guys have anything else to say about this, or can we move on to the next story? All right, I'll take that as we're going to move on. Okay, Mr. Max, would you tell us a little bit about Philip Davies, please?
Yes, no problem. So, unexpectedly, we have an article from The Guardian that only reports the facts of the situation, although, their bias maintains its strong undercurrent. An MP in the UK named Philip Davies was recently elected to the Parliament's Equalities Committee. This caused a stir for many other MPs, including our beloved Jess Phillips in the Labour Party, because of Mr. Davies' anti-feminist tendencies. Last Friday, Davies spoke for more than an hour in the House of Commons, filibustering a bill meant to protect women against violence. His reasoning for doing this centers on the fact that men are the primary victims of public sphere violence. Naturally, the vote for the bill passed 135 to 2, yet that didn't stop Mr. Davies from continuing his advocacy. In his speech, he noted that people would try to characterize his opposition to the bill as being for violence against women, which he was very right to do, as the Liberal Democrat Party's press office tweeted the following: "Why on earth would you spend your Friday trying to block this? Philip Davies' constituents getting very poor value." The aforementioned Jess Phillips said the following in support of the bill: "For some people, they wake up on Christmas Day and they will try not to say anything wrong. They will make sure everything is perfect. They will have risk assessed every single step that they take throughout the day, because just this one day their children deserve not to have the monster that lives in their home erupt in their faces." To this, I think I can speak for the Badgers and everybody listening at home when I say, no fucking shit.
Oh man, I got to jump on this one.
All right.
But you know what? Jess Phillips can fucking eat a dick straight up. Seriously. No, for real. She's trying to frame this as as a women are cowering in fear against men. With my fucking ex, the one that fucking punched me, I talked about this last week or the week before. This was what it was like living with her. I was fucking on eggshells, towards the end of our relationship. I was on eggshells all the time. I had to plan out things that I said in advance, because if I said the wrong fucking thing, she would fucking explode on me. So get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. This infuriates me. This makes me livid to a point where I want to punch things. I'm just so toxic and masculine right now. This is insane. This is not an issue based on sex, and for her to fucking turn it into one, God, she is so fucking ignorant. I mean, I'm not saying anything new here. Everybody knows that Jess Phillips is an ignorant bitch, but fucking this is disgusting. This infuriates me that they try and turn these things into, oh, it's only men, abusing women. It's always men abusing women. It's never the other way around. It's
sexist.
Wouldn't even.
Oh my God.
I wouldn't even eat your dick, Jess. Wouldn't.
She has a dick.
Just imagine, there was nothing gendered in what she said. She referred to a monster. That could easily, if you can imagine Philip Davis referring to women as the monster that lives in their home. Yeah, the whole fucking place would erupt in his face, and yet Jess Phillips comes on and says that about men. Probably got applauded.
Probably.
Wouldn't even eat your dick, Jess.
Is
well,
Jess
if it's
Phillips
any consolation?
Go ahead, Max.
No, I was just going to say, if it's any consolation, if I understand correctly, the Labour Party lost. Well, they didn't lose; they just came in fourth place in the last two by-elections in the UK. Mike, is that correct?
I believe that's accurate.
Okay,
Not going
cool.
well for the Labour Party.
And they keep doing shit like this, it's only going to continue going downhill. Sorry, go ahead.
It's only going to get worse. No, I was just going to say, is Jess Phillips like Philip Davies' arch nemesis? Because every time they seem to always be butting heads. Am I wrong about that? I feel like they're always fighting over something. It's usually because Jess Phillips is being a cunt at the time. But I just wonder about that. And as far as the story goes, I'm glad that he Philip bustered the meeting to make some points. Here's one of her quotes here. Just this one day. This is Jess Phillips, I believe. Just this one day, their children deserve to have the peaceful day that all of our children have taken for granted, and so all of the stresses we'll feel for those people will be terror and control over everything they say and do in order to keep things safe. That was...
Which is true.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, that was... Yeah. I'm sorry. Her quote is, for some people, they wake up on Christmas Day and they will try not to say anything wrong. They will try not to put a foot wrong. They will make sure everything is perfect. They will have risk assessed every single step that they take throughout the day, because just this one day their children deserve not to have that monster that lives in their home erupt in their faces. So this is something that just meant
Toxic
right?
masculinity.
Yeah. This is the scary, scary man.
And you know what? And to make another really quick point here, I sincerely think that Jess Phillips must be, she must be harboring some sociopathic tendencies, because she doesn't seem to have any sense of empathy towards men whatsoever. I mean, everything she said, and granted, I'm only seeing a subsection of what she says. I don't follow her to the point where I know everything that comes out of her mouth, but the things that I've seen come out of her mouth have been pretty damning and pretty anti-male. But she doesn't seem to have any sort of empathy. And that's what kind of fucking life is that, man? Seriously, the kind of bile she spits just shows that she just doesn't give a fuck about men at all.
One of the things,
dude,
couldn't care less.
Mac, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, of course she's a sociopath, dude. Because when you tell somebody that you're not going to rape them and they take that as a rape threat.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's just,
I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Just pointing it out. Anyways, go ahead, Brian.
Well, no, I was gonna to your comment about empathy. I was just gonna say that I think that there could be one of two things, and I've been thinking about empathy a little bit. But there was a conversation that I had briefly with Jordan Peterson when we had him on for an interview, and one of the things that we talked about was a paper that he shared, and it was all about an excess of empathy and how it can create tribalistic attitudes and the way that people behave. Because you introduce a group, right? You introduce a group to someone, and you tell them that this group is in need of all of your empathy, because here is everything that's wrong with them. But what happens as a consequence of that, if it's too much empathy, is there is a lack of empathy, or even whatever the opposite of empathy might be, which I guess is indifference or ambivalence or whatever, towards another group that is supposedly the group responsible for the suffering that the original group was under.
Right. Towards the outgroup, basically.
Right. It's aimed at the outgroup. So when the way that social justice warriors rhetoric goes is they're always basically saying, the groups that we're looking out for, which is, the women, minorities, homosexuals, trans people, the disabled, etc., all these people are put upon, and they are oppressed, and they are suffering because of these other people who are not those things. So white, male, straight, Christian, Republican, whatever.
Their suffering is so great that nothing else matters.
Yeah, but it's not. But all the suffering they have is not their doing. There is a disparity between how well Group A is doing and how well Group B is doing, and the only answer, the only reason why this could possibly be is because Group B is being oppressed by Group A. So when you take a great deal of empathy for the oppressed group, it actually makes you dislike or even hate the outgroup, even if you're part of the group, which is one of the reasons why, because I said this on another show once before. There's a lot of people that they usually say, well, when you look into who these SJWs are that are basically calling for, white genocide, like the MTV thing, where most of the guys on the staff were white men, and then there was, and the only women were also white women.
All the people that run MTV.
Yeah, the people who run MTV. And, and this has happened with, a lot of other companies. There was, a Huffington Post thing. I think it was Huffington Post. Was it? Where they had the photo of...
it was all female.
It was an all-female, team, but they were all white women.
Right.
I mean, this, this is funny because of the irony in it. But it is, when you really think about it, there are a couple things at play. One is guilt, obviously.
Right.
And that comes from, I think, a self-loathing that is taught and repeated over and over and over through interactions with your peers, in academia, and so on. But I do not limit, and I try not to, if at all possible, I try not to limit this stuff to white people, because I know that minorities are just as bad and capable of it as well. But the reason...
This is a human issue.
It's a human
skin
issue.
color.
But the difference is in perhaps it would appear. Well, look at the guy Butler or whatever. He's like worth $4 million, and he was the guy who was like, we got nothing to lose but our chains at Mizzou or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. He's like a black guy, but son of a millionaire.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, is I've noticed that the people who don't have anything, they engage in like the have-nots, as it were. They engage, if they become SJWs, they do so because they want resources. The people who have, or at least believe that they do, because they buy into the whole privilege thing, they do it because they want to alleviate their guilt. They want to have the moral high ground so they don't have to feel bad about what they are, when in actual fact is there's no reason for them to feel bad in the first place. And the people who are just chasing after resources, they are feeling justified by it because they're being told that the world did this to them, specifically Group B over here. So going back to Jess Phillips, I think that her lack of empathy, like she probably is too old to see how much what she believes is potentially, if not outright, blatantly harmful towards men and worse towards boys, because that's invisible to, especially to people like her. Like, I think a normie, if you introduce all the problems that boys have to a normal person that isn't like fixed on being a feminist or whatever, if you tell them these are all the problems that boys have, I think that they would sympathize, provided they didn't buy into all the rhetoric. But people like Jess Phillips, she's like got like the Grinch heart, like the tiny shriveled up black heart, because she's an ideologue. She's just operating.
She's got her heels dug in. Yeah.
She just follows her programming.
Yeah, basically.
That's it.
Basically. Yeah.
So,
you know what? It's funny too, because this isn't like anything new. I mean, obviously, but like, just quick little anecdote. When I was a teenager, I used to do Food Not Bombs. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's where we get together and would feed homeless people. We'd get them clothing, do all this sort of thing to help homeless folks, right? And there were some people there that were very much in the vein of Jess Phillips, like that had that they were guilty. They were doing it out of a sense of guilt. And I was doing it because I was like, fuck, you know what? I've got a pretty decent life. I do okay, and if I can do something to help somebody out, it was, I hoped, at least in my mind, it felt like an altruistic endeavor. But there were people that were definitely there, that were very, very well off, that were doing it because they were guilty, and they'd fucking flagellate themselves all the time, and it's just like, I don't understand that mindset. It's just it's so fucking harmful. It's harmful to the person doing it as well as everybody around you, because it's like, when you see people, like, they don't get it. I mean, they're doing it for the wrong reasons, and I just think that's a bad situation. And I think it eventually turns into a situation like with Jess Phillips and many other people, where they have that switch at some point where they get so entrenched in that ideology that they can't see past it anymore, and they become these jaded, like you said, black-hearted people, where they lose a sense of empathy or a sense of caring, and that's a fucking terrible way to live, man. That's a really, really bad way to live. So,
absolutely.
I'll get off my box now.
Okay.
My soapbox.
It's cool. Well, I guess we'll just move on to the next story, unless somebody else has any thoughts on Jess Phillips and Philip Davies. Keep on trucking, brother. That's all I gotta say. He's it's funny. He keeps making the news, but his party is really small, isn't it? Or am I wrong? Oh, I'm getting him confused for Mike Buchanan. Sorry, Mike.
Why'd you have to say keep on trucking right before the next story?
Yeah, right.
Freudian slip, ladies
Too
and gentlemen.
soon. All right. Speaking of the next story, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about...
I'll take it away. Let's see what I can do with this. The start of the winter holiday week in Europe began with death and violence. 2 Islamic terrorist attacks, happening mere hours apart from one another, were committed Monday in Berlin and Turkey. In Turkey, the Russian ambassador to Turkey, Andrev Karlov, was shot multiple times by off-duty Turkish police officer. The assassin, Meirut Mert al-Intash shouted Allah Akbar, as well as "Do not forget Aleppo, do not forget Syria" after the attack. Al-Intash was subsequently shot dead by Turkish authorities, but not before injuring 3 others. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Ambassador Karlov succumbed to his injuries. The attack is believed to have been an attempt to weaken the newly warming relations between Syria and Russia. Meanwhile, in Berlin, a yet-to-be unidentified man driving a stolen truck plowed through a Christmas market, killing 12 and injuring over 40. Inside the truck, a Polish man was found shot dead. It appears that he was the original driver of the truck, who was also killed by the attacker in a hijacking. The driver fled the scene shortly after the attack. German police arrested 23-year-old Pakistani asylum seeker shortly after, but were forced to release him due to lack of evidence after he tested negative for gunshot residue. German police are currently preparing to launch a manhunt for the perpetrator. The attack has drawn comparisons to the truck attack in Nice, France earlier this year. The Islamic State has also taken responsibility for this attack.
Wow. I know this isn't really like men's rights related, at least not on its surface. I don't know. We'll see. It depends on how this gets reported. It could become that, but it was just too timely to ignore, so I had to put it up there. So yeah,
well,
man.
The guy just wanted to, he wanted to deliver the message of peace to people via the front end of a truck.
Yes.
Oh God, when is this gonna fucking stop?
Well.
Here, let me read you a quick headline from, I'm not sure what newspaper this is. I'm just reading this from Dave Rubin's Twitter. But somebody wrote a headline, I'll find out who it's from in a second, that says, "Truck hits Berlin Christmas market, killing 12." Subtitle, "Berlin police say a man suspected of driving the truck has been arrested." And that's it. Yeah. And there's one mention, apparently, of the terrorist nationality, origin, religion, etc. Oh, and it's apparently by Politico.
Of course. I'm sure Snopes is going to get right on that. And I think that's the way in which, well, there's a couple things. One is the way that it's being reported, which does make it, in my opinion, a media issue in terms, because they have their biased reporting, and you guys know that. This isn't new, but considering this happened, it's good to see. You can watch them lie in real time, or at least omit. I'll say that, omit. And the other thing is, though, I was talking to my girl the other day. It was last night, and I was telling her that I've noticed this is really tragic, obviously, and I'm concerned with how, especially with the ambassador getting killed. I'm concerned with how Putin is going to respond. Although he seemed pretty measured, he was just like, "Well, it looks like we're gonna have to get serious," and that was basically the long and the short of it. And I'm really glad that we're friends with Russia, because that could be bad for us as well. But I was talking to my girl the other day, and I was saying that when I first discovered men's rights stuff, there was sort of like a cascade avalanche domino effect that happened. The first thing was that I came across Karen's videos and like MGTOW videos and stuff, and I started watching them and I got hooked. And even though I didn't really have the ability to go and confirm the numbers that she was spitting out about domestic violence, about rape culture and all that, and these were things that I had heard, like in terms of the feminist claims, like the 1 in 4, the 77 cents on the dollar, and so on. The logic was what got to me when she basically was like, well, if women could be paid less, then why wouldn't companies hire fewer women, and a lot of the other stuff that made a lot of sense. And I was like, I can't, even when I tried to sort of debunk it in my head, just thinking about it, I was like, this is pretty hard stuff to debunk. And over time, I started to consume more and more media, and I was hooked on it. I started watching all kinds of stuff, and I believe that there is a thread that runs through everything that I tend to consume, like in terms of there's a connection between men's rights issues, the relationship between men and women, which I think is probably at the top of this thing, the problems in the black community, the way that the government is run, and the amount of corruption that we have in the U.S. government, and there's probably, I'm not even going to limit it to U.S. government. I'm sure that there's problems with all of your governments. I mean, Max's prime minister is a substitute drama teacher. So, and the
and get this, our provincial leader
is the substitute prime minister.
Yeah, our provincial leader is a former gym teacher.
Hey, I get it. It's a simple country. But but then there's then there was Gamergate, and then the way the media responded to that, and then there was, we got up to the migrant crisis, and then you got the culture war, alternative media growing, the Donald Trump election, and I feel like there is something that connects all of these things. And I can't quite put my finger on it. And so when I do the report on this and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, I could see how the media will report on this because I've seen how they've behaved in the past. All this stuff about fake news, all this stuff about, the way that CNN and ABC and NBC reports on terrorist attacks, reports on the election, reports on the Russian hackers, which apparently are responsible for everything. I had lunch today and my pork was cold. I'm sure the Russian hackers are behind it. I just have to figure out how. Right. But with all of those things, I'm getting the sense there's something there. It's and I'm not going into tinfoil hat land here. I'm saying it's. I think it all comes down to the way that we get in the information age, the way that we're getting our information mixed and with the way that we used to get it, which was through academia and our mainstream media. If it wasn't for the internet, how many of us would even have learned about the ambassador getting killed? I wonder about that. Even though that's super important to know. And there's this really great high quality video. It looks like something out of Jason Bourne. It's pretty crazy.
Well, it was being broadcast live, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they had the news was there capturing it. So yeah, we have that stuff available because that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something there, and I just you just call it a hunch, and I know it doesn't. It's not based on reality, and people are probably gonna give me shit in the comments. But
no, I think it probably is based on reality to some extent. But I think maybe you might be conflating the way that the news, the news has a very specific way in which they want to present things, with maybe other stuff. I don't know that there's a connection between MRA type stuff.
Well,
and
that's just it.
Does it specifically, but I think it's just a matter of the news and their unwillingness to cover certain things. And I mean, I could be wrong though, but that's just kind of how I see it.
Here's one thing I will say: if you look at how the media, the news media, which most people consume, the average American, the average Canadian, the average Englishman, probably consumes mainstream media. And whatever the narrative is, the mainstream media wants you to get, even when they're just reporting on what you might consider to be factual stuff, or they're just giving you the facts and the figures. The way that they have reported on the MRM and just the manosphere in general, and I'm specifically talking about these three countries because you've seen how the BBC has treated MRAs, the way the CBC has done it, and the way we've done it here, which is almost like giving them no attention, with the exception of, say, a GQ magazine, which threw the MRAs under the bus big time. And you look at how they reported on that, which is essentially a cherry-picked version that has a very big slant, and it's not born out of laziness. I think it's born out of either indifference or a desire to sensationalize, to basically say, well, if we say these guys hate women, we'll get more views, or it's because they genuinely are opposed to them politically. And you compare that to the way that they're reporting on Gamergate, or were, which was basically the same, and also could have been born out of similar things such as indifference or whatever, or a lack of a desire to find out what was going on, which is rich because you're journalists and that's your fucking job.
Right.
And then you look at how they're reporting on stuff like Islamic terrorist attacks, where they're basically saying, oh yes, some guy flipped out, some lone gunman lost his shit, or some truck just drove into a crowd of people. There was a guy in it, and they have him, but we don't know anything else. We don't want to make any assumptions. So
to speak to the one point that you said about I think we were pretty much all aware at this point that the way the news reports on female and male issues is somewhat slanted because the things when you're talking about like violence against women, that makes the news because it gets more ratings. I think maybe in that regard you might be right, because well, I mean, I know you're right in that regard as far as that's concerned, but
yeah, I mean, if it bleeds, it leads, and that
and if it's a woman, even more so, that'll get even better
yeah.
ratings. So, or a child per se, you know, whatever the situation is, but yeah. But just to speak as somebody, I used to work for NBC, and I can't really say definitively, you know, how this is why these things happen. But there were, and I've actually, it's kind of funny because there's actually, you know, videos on YouTube of local news stations airing the same content, but like all across the nation, basically. But there would be things that would come in from that were like mandatory things that you had to put on. Like they had to be written up, they had to be put on air. So there is maybe there is something more going on there. I mean, you know, I can't think of a specific one at this moment, but I remember that, you know, there would be the stories that we would do local, but then there would be the stories that would come in from, you know, the high command basically at NBC.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, maybe there's something more to it actually. Now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more and remembering that part of things. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was just gonna. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Have they actually found the truck driver yet, or have they just arrested a couple of guys but not being able to get them on anything?
Have they found the truck driver yet?
Is the truck driver still at large?
No,
I think he is.
I think that he is.
Yeah. The last thing that I'd read was they caught a guy, but they had to release him. But there was a sexual assault charge was standing or hanging over him. But that was it, though.
Well, they arrested one guy, but they couldn't prove it because of some kind of gun residue. For all we know, the second guy they arrested, they can't prove anything about either. And it just got me wondering that maybe this will start a sort of witch hunt for brown men. But then it got me thinking, we're taking someone's word for it that a man was driving the truck.
Yeah.
This would be a brilliant scheme for a woman to try out. Just drive a truck into somewhere and then, like, perhaps with a mask on. Perhaps you don't even need a mask. Perhaps they just assume you're a man if you're driving a truck into something. And then once you've done that, just jump out and walk casually around the scene, and everyone would just see you as a woman. There's no way that person just drove that truck and then jumped out of it. Just saying, this would be a brilliant way to cause terrorism or a brilliant way to do a false flag. And you know, maybe we should be keeping our eyes peeled for that kind of terrorist as well, just in case. There you go, men's rights issue.
Fair enough. Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh crap! What have I done? Okay. So here, let me ask you guys a question. This is just speculation. So, what do you think? Do you guys have any idea as to what you think Russia will do in response to the ambassador being killed? How bad do you think that is?
You know what? Here's the thing. Something you have to consider when you're talking about Putin. Putin used to be he's KGB, or he is KGB. He was KGB. He was head of the KGB. He knows how to keep shit tight. He knows how to keep things close to his vest. So when he comes out and he's just like, yeah, that's something. You know, there's shit going on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. But I think he is savvy enough to not overreact. I don't like Putin a whole lot. I'm not like a big fan of his or anything, but I think from seeing what we've seen from him in the past and knowing his background, I think he's savvy enough to know that, you know, some crazy fucking response or him going out there and start yelling about shit is probably not the way he's going to handle it. You know, because that's not been the way he's handled things to this point anyway. Not that I'm aware of anyway. He's generally been pretty reserved and pretty tight-lipped about stuff for the most part. I mean, he might throw, a quip out there here and there, but I don't know. I think he's got a decent head on him, and he doesn't overreact. So, I don't know. It's kind of how I see it, anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the next story, unless somebody else has any other thoughts on the Truck of Peace or the Hitman Absolution guy. No? Okay, so I will go ahead and do the last story. Okay, this is the last story. Yes, it is. A play on words. Just a moment here. The Trump grab him by the pussy tape has provoked feminist fear, public outrage, and now an inspirational play. Scotland's leading theatre, Traverse Theatre in Edinburgh, along with playwright Gary McNair, wow, that's Scottish, are tackling issues raised by Trump's boasts about groping women in a play called Locker Room Talk. McNair said he was disappointed by conversations around Trump's behavior and wanted to ask deeper questions, like, why do men talk like this? Where do men talk like this? And what gives them the privilege and right to feel like they can? The play, based on interviews McNair conducted with men, will be performed by an all-female cast in February. The female director, Orla O'Loughlin, says the play seeks to elevate the voices of those left in the margins. She told Scotsman, "It's about reaching as diverse a group of men as possible, getting out of the echo chamber and being robust enough to take it and understand our very close proximity to it in our community and society. Never before have I read a sentence that was so full of a lack of self-awareness. I would hope that we surprise ourselves and we learn things and reveal things that we weren't expecting. I'm very excited about the show's future." All right. So
555, come on now. Jesus Christ. Really? Really?
yeah,
Fucking really?
It's fucking ridiculous, man.
it's fucking ridiculous.
Like, seriously. All right, look. You know what? Donald Trump said some pretty fucking stupid shit. I'll give you that. But I don't care. It's his fucking right. He can say what he fucking wants.
Well, the thing
And
is,
how is this play gonna fucking... What is... Really? Are they really hoping to get anything out of this? I mean, this is just... They're cashing in on a fucking... On a thing that happened that was, you know, it's like people are all butt blasted about it. And, you know, to a certain extent, rightfully so. But, like... They're cashing in. They're not fucking exploring new ground and trying to reach in. This is, oh my god, this is so dumb.
yes, they're cashing in. They're trying to make
cashing
money
in on a thing that didn't even happen in their own fucking country.
Hey, like I've always said, Max, never let a good boogeyman go to waste.
Social justice is profitable.
Radiohead did an album about George Bush stealing the election, and now these folks have done a wonderful little play about Donald Trump saying grab him by the pussy. Each to their own. Each to their own. You know.
I want to hear the opening number.
So apparently the God, just okay. So Gary, the playwright, he interviewed several men, and basically, I guess he got them to spill their whatever their locker room talk might be. And he's going to have a cast of women speak it. This is not even... I don't even know that this is a play. It sounds like spoken word performance art or something. And not in the good way. Not that there's much good performance art, but there probably is somewhere. I just haven't seen it because it's all like... Basically, it's like activism disguised as art, which is what's wrong with art, but that's a whole other fucking
Feminist dance
animal.
routines.
Or just art disguised as art.
Yeah.
Or just not art disguised as art.
Postmodernism.
But yeah, look at this quote. I love this quote. Why do men talk like this? Okay. Where do men talk like this? And what gives them the privilege and the right to feel that they can? Does Scotland not have freedom of speech? Is that why that this is like so just unbelievable to this guy? And okay, and I'm not gonna necessarily defend what Trump said because I don't think it needs to be defended. I don't think it's. I mean, I've said shit like that. My friends have said shit like that in the privacy of our homes or whatever. You know, women I know have said shit like that or worse than that. But I don't think anybody should be punished for it. I don't think it's like fucking get out the fainting couch and my pearls for clutching because I just heard somebody say the word pussy or whatever. So, I mean, they're not just going to say grab him by the pussy for an hour. They're going to have an entire play. That means there's going to be lots of male statements. And I bet, I mean, I would not touch this fucking play with a fucking like 100-foot pole, but I'm betting that there will be a bunch of shit in here that isn't even offensive. It's only being turned into something offensive in order to manipulate people. You know,
this came up quite a lot at the BAM festival, by the way, because everyone was still talking about the election and stuff because it was still quite hot, and they were talking about, they zeroed in on the phrase locker room talk, and they were already discussing, you know, how do we clamp down on this thing they call locker room talk. This magical incantation they use to excuse the privilege of grabbing pussies. And that, you know, by next semester they're going to have it down and they're going to be teaching it to new students. Locker room talk is just code word for rape culture.
They're going to have locker room sensitivity training, Mike.
Yeah. That's what they're probably going to put recording devices or cameras in there.
Oh,
when men are in there to make sure they don't say anything untoward.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what we need, is cameras in the locker room.
Well, they're everywhere else in fucking over there, aren't they? I mean, Christ.
You said it, Brian, not me.
Yeah, anyway, this is dumb. And there's not much else that I can really add to it, except, well, it is exactly as Scott pointed out, though. It's more than just a play that's trying to draw attention to some kind of issue. It's a cash grab. It's basically what a lot of like new sort of entertainment media is becoming, is an excuse to. There's a belief, I think, that social justice causes are they can make you good money, and I think that there's some truth to it, because you can make something, and yes, you'll attract the audience of people who want to see it. Like they just want to be able to go see it, pat themselves in the back, and say, "Oh yeah, I did this great thing. I went and saw a movie. I'm helping." You know, I saw a play, or yes, I went and watched a play, or I watched a film. I went and paid money. But the thing is, and on top of that, it also, when it's free media, it also tends to attract people who really hate it. So they're going to be like, what the fuck is this shit? I'm going to find out. And then they go see it, and then they go, go online and blog and complain about it. So you are going to get twice the audience that you expected, or at least that would be the belief if it wasn't for the fact that stuff like, I don't know, Ghostbusters didn't make any money. And that was probably engineered with that in mind. I mean, what's his name? Kevin Feige or whatever? Paul Feig? I can't.
Paul Feig.
Paul Feig. I get him confused with the Marvel guy.
Just say fag.
Yeah, just say fag.
It's on everybody's mind.
Yes. Paul Fag. Yeah, he blatantly said, that he was going for a feminist agenda-oriented movie. He didn't hide it. He didn't even try to. And when he did that, you just had a shit product and people complained about it. But then you also have stuff like Hamilton, the play, which was also going for something similar. And I think that when it comes to the theater crowd, they tend to be more SJWE because, again, you're faced with this. The thing about theater is that there tend to be a lot of people who are not doing well because it's not a medium that the mainstream is really into. It's kind of niche, and it doesn't make a ton of money, except for the people who own them and the people who are producers. But like the actors, musicians, like I work in theater. Usually people who are actors and musicians in theater, people who are, doing like the hard work, they have part-time jobs as waitresses and, taxi drivers and shit because they can't actually live off of that. So
yeah. They don't call the guy that owns the theater a starving theater owner. They call the people that work there starving artists.
And usually theater owners... Oh, go ahead.
There's a wide range of creative people. Some creative people are people, and some creative people are like me, just sit behind a screen for hours doing on their own that sort of creative.
Yeah.
I mean, and it stands to reason that the people who are creative go into things like theatre and maybe sort of big films where there's always crowds to talk to and crowds to work with. Mm-hmm. And it stands to reason the slightly spurgy people go into the editing and the behind the scenes performance, if you will, and the slightly borderline people go into the song and dance routines. It almost doesn't need explaining,
Makes sense, yeah. And those people tend to be, from my experience, the people who are usually doing the song and the dance and the acting and the performing and stuff, they tend to, well, they're dreamers for one, which is why they're in theater, and which is not by itself really a bad thing, but they tend to be more in this sort of ideological camp. Like they sit and they think, they hear about this play and they say, oh, that's something I need to get behind. I feel very strongly about this. I want to make this thing happen. And then there are theater goers that share the same idea. Many of them are actors themselves that are also working in plays, in my experience. So this is almost like just like what's happened in the fine art world. The playwriting and performing like Broadway stuff is almost art for artists. So it kind of ends up in, ironically, an echo chamber of people who are already in the field, or they're kind of like, enthusiasts about live plays. So
I was literally getting ready to say that.
Yeah.
About the fine art thing. You see that, because I used to work in a museum and we used to have art shows every month. And you would see the people that would show up to the art shows. Granted, there were people there that were like, fans or whatever, but most of the people that showed up to these art shows were other artists. Mm-hmm. And they would stand around and, and pontificate about the meaning of the art and this, that, and the other.
Nursing their one glass of wine. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was like you said, it was this weird echo chamber kind of thing that was going on.
Yep.
Where it's like everybody's standing around patting each other on the back and telling each other how great they are, but like when it came down to it, nobody really gave a fuck about the art. There weren't people there to buy stuff.
No. And they were all bullshitting, because I've been to lots of art shows too, and they were all bullshitting about what the art meant to them. They were just reaching. To like find something to talk about. So that old joke of somebody looking at like an abstract painting and they're just like that that they're making shit up about what they see in it. That's not a joke. That's really what happens.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And
the best part too is like that we would have like the artist would be there for the show, obviously, and they would be trying to sell people on the stuff, and just to listen to these people talk, I was just like, I fucking loved it. I was just like a fly on the wall, just listening. And I was just like, holy shit, I should be recording this. This is fucking solid gold.
Yeah, the pretentiousness was hilarious.
It's fucking amazing. It was an art form in and of itself, actually.
Oh, yeah, I could see it. So, yeah, anyway, so, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of funny, this play. We'll see how it goes. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a massive failure. And no one will see it, and that'll be the end of it. But I thought it was funny anyways, especially the bit about, how could men, where is this happening? Why are they doing it? And why are we letting them? It's like, because we're people. We're flawed. What's wrong with you? Women do it too, so fucking what? Actually, I'd like to hear some more of them, because that grab by the pussy thing cracks me up every time I hear it. Because he says it so casually. He's like, oh, they let you do it. Just grab him by the pussy. And I just was like, imagining the act of trying to grab pussy. And it just made me laugh my ass off.
You can't even grab a pussy.
No. Well,
get a fucking grip on it.
No, you don't get a grip on it. You got to put like 2 or 3 in there, and then it's. You ever grabbed a bowling ball? It's like grabbing a bowling ball.
Damn it! I was getting ready to say that.
What you're grabbing is the entire pelvic region. Otherwise, you can't lift the whole abdomen upward.
Yeah, because if you can't grab and pull, there's no point in grabbing. But they let you do it. They let you do it.
You ever see those ice dancers where you hold them there and then you spin around?
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like that.
Exactly. Like you were just pointing out ice dancers, and I thought of professional ice skating couples. There's pussy grabbing going on the whole time when you watch that. It's part of the act. You have to.
It's fucking hot.
Yeah. And the female ice skaters, they need to rely on their partner, to catch them by the pussy when they're in the air twirling and shit, or carry them or whatever. And sometimes you just gotta let them grab, poon. They just gotta grab poon. The guy's probably gay anyway, so it's fine.
We give no fucks here.
We give no fucks. It's just, anything for a laugh. Anywho,
It's pretty clear at this point that the rules are you shouldn't grab pussy because you're not allowed, and you shouldn't grab dick because dick is dirty.
That's right.
So, good old patriarchy, eh? Never lets us down.
There you go.
This is true. Although I just bathed, so feel free to grab my dick. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up the show because we're gonna do the bonus show, which is about men being on curfew. So that should be fun. Again, if you want to join us for the post shows, consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And in addition, if you can, we still have about 55 tickets left for the Red Pill screening in Chicago. If you can come, or if you know anyone that lives close enough, and I mean, I'm okay. Bring your enemies, bring feminists, bring people who don't have an interest or would actually be opposed to it. Pay for their ticket and let them watch it. I think that they may become red pilled by this movie. It has had pretty profound effects on fence sitters and even feminists, except for the really ideological ones that are just like, you just put out a biased thing. All your feminists were bad examples, like Ms. Magazine and Michael Kimmel. Totally not good feminist examples. Anyway, please consider that. And yeah, that's it for the Polecat cast. I want to thank you, Mike and Max and Scott, for sticking with me. Sticking with me. And I want to thank the...
I don't even wait. I just stick it in, and they let you.